Hey guys, today we're going to be looking at OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. So we're going to talk about what this distro is and we're going to demo a few things. So you see here we have a KDE Plasma desktop. There are other options available. We'll go through the install really quick in a little bit, but yeah, I already have this installed right here. We're using Wayland. You can select X11 at the login screen. So you have the option during install to select like a pure text-based server install or a KDE GNOME or some other choices, and I chose KDE here, and you actually have, if you go out to the login screen, you can select Wayland or X11, depending on which is going to work better for you. Sometimes one or the other is a little bit more buggy. So in any case, we're using SDDM for the display manager, and I've already installed NeoFetch ahead of time just so I could kind of show you this, as soon as I start this video. But here you go. Here's NeoFetch OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. Running this kernel. I actually downloaded this ISO a little while back, so it's almost the latest and greatest. I'm using an older Nvidia card, which is working. That's a whole other issue with drivers, making sure you get the right driver. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. So before we go any further with anything else, I'm going to go ahead and change the wallpaper and the theme. So first, let's just take a look at the theme here. So KDE theme. And there's a lot of stuff. You can change things individually or just change the overall theme. There's a lot of poking around you can do with KDE. You could choose Breeze Dark and apply this. And there we go. We have a nice dark theme applied. Everything's good. Now I have a wallpaper. All right, desktop wallpaper. I have one picked out already. So let's go ahead and add from home right here. I think this is an appropriate wallpaper. Perfect. Did I add that? Yeah, there we go. So that looks nice. Change the theme, change the wallpaper. Huge difference, right? Looks amazing. So some quick background here. So SUSE is one of the big enterprise corporate-backed distros, along with Red Hat and Ubuntu. So it's been described as kind of like Red Hat, but European. So OpenSUSE is basically the community edition of SUSE Linux Enterprise, or SLE, also called SLES for SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, or SLED for SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop. So Tumbleweed is like it's the community edition of both of those. Now Tumbleweed is the rolling release version of OpenSUSE. So OpenSUSE is the community edition and Tumbleweed is the specific rolling release version of OpenSUSE. Now, they also have OpenSUSE Leap, which is a point release version. So SUSE is a brand name, and it was originally a German acronym for software and systems development. And so anyways, this is a rolling release version of OpenSUSE Linux. It's a little bit more cutting edge than OpenSUSE Leap, because it receives the latest updates all the time, just constantly, continuously, always being up to date. But it's also considered stable for a rolling release because it's well tested. They use a tool called OpenQA. It's an automated test framework, which is said to result in a lot more stability. So while you're going to get the latest, the latest and greatest software like you would with Arch, it's supposed to be a lot more stable than that. Your mileage may vary, but that's the idea behind this. Now, so basically, Tumbleweed is always current, bleeding edge, but tested, right? Now you have flexible desktop choices, KDE Plasma, GNOME, XFCE, etc., etc. The package manager is Zypper, and it's for installing and updating software, but it installs RPMs as the package format. So Zypper's the package manager. The package format is RPM, just like Red Hat, and they actually borrowed this from Red Hat. You also have Flatpak installed by default. So I already have Flatpak on here, so I can install Flatpaks if I want. So I have two choices. I can use the native Zypper package manager, or I could use Flatpak if I like. Now, SUSE Linux was originally based on Slackware back in the early 90s, but it diverged heavily. Today, it's considered to be fully independent. Now, SUSE has actually created their own package manager, but they are using RPM, which was taken from Red Hat. So they were based on SUSE, took the package format from Red Hat and created their own package manager called Zypper. that's what you get with OpenSUSE. But there's a lot of other stuff that sets OpenSUSE apart. So one of the big things that you will hear about with OpenSUSE that sets it apart is YAST. So YAST stands for Yet Another Setup Tool. This is basically SUSE's control center. Now we're going to take a look at that in a bit after we go through some of the basics about what OpenSUSE is and so on. So anyways, they also have another tool called Open Build Service, OBS, for building packages either for SUSE or other distros. We're not going to cover that one in this video. We are going to cover YAST. We're going to go over the basics of YAST. Also worth noting, they use BTRFS, ButterFS, or BTreeFS, however you want to say that, in combination with a tool called Snapper to take snapshots so that you can easily roll back to a previous version. So it takes automatic snapshots, and you can use this tool called Snapper List. In fact, I should try that right now. Snapper List. So, all right, you need sudo for that. And I shouldn't have any I do have some snapshots apparently. I can make this terminal a little bit bigger here. And there you go. There's the snapshots taken so far. And I think after doing upgrades of your system, it's going to take snapshots there for you too. So that's a helpful thing to have. One of the things that sets it apart. Another thing that sets SUSE apart is the network configuration framework called Wicked. It's more common on servers and for Leap or SLES, or SUSE Linux Enterprise. So it's more common for those, and it makes more sense on a server rather than on a desktop where you're changing your network potentially more often, especially with Wi-Fi and stuff like that. But alternatives to Wicked would be Systemd Network D for servers and Network Manager typically on desktops and laptops. In this case, for Tumbleweed, we have Network Manager. Might be different if you install the pure text-based environment. Have not tried that. But anyways, right now we're using Network Manager. It works great with Wi-Fi and everything else. I'm using a wired connection, but it also recognizes wireless. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Now, but Wicked is the unique thing to OpenSUSE, but it still uses can use standard stuff like Systemd Network D and Network Manager like a normal distro would. Anyways, the installation was quick and easy. I have a separate video on this if you want to check it out. It lets you select what type of desktop you want and what options you want, but it's relatively quick and concise. You can configure the disk, do a custom config if you want, but you don't have to. You can just go next, just fill out your password and stuff, and you're ready to go practically. So it's pretty easy. Now, let's take a quick look at the kernel here before we look at anything else. So uname-a, and we got kernel version 6.16.8-1-default. So I think that just has to do with the build. It's the default kernel that they built for this. Now, I downloaded this ISO a little while back. I'm not sure how much it's updated the full system during installation, and I haven't manually updated it myself, but it's not too old, but it's probably not. They might have a newer one if I were to pull down a new update is what I'm saying. So anyways, there's your kernel, and let's just check out Etsy issue. There we go. OpenSUSE Tumbleweed 2025-09-23. And all right, yeah, looks like that is the latest because that was 2 days ago. And I downloaded this ISO well before this, probably a month or two ago. So it looks like it pulled down all the latest stuff during installation, which is nice. So, which I did click the button to tell it to, pull down updates and use the online repository. So cat Etsy OS release. And here we see some more details. OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, the version, the ID light, yeah, all of this stuff, the pretty name, and so on and so forth. So let's take a look at RAM usage before we really do anything. So let's clear this out. free-h, and we're going to look at disk space in a little bit too. So we got 32 gigs of RAM on here, showing up as 31 GI. Used is 2.6, and free is 27. Available, all right, so we have some of it being buffered or cached, and available is actually 28 right here. So there you go. 8 gigs of swap space, none of it in use. So that's our memory being used. So that's not too bad. Yeah, that's not too bad for, base system up and running with KDE. That's not bad at all. So you're going to see probably a whole lot more than that on like Mac OS or Windows 11 or whatever. So anyways, That's relatively normal for Linux. You can get it down a lot further. If you want to install something more lightweight. Anyways, you can trim things down more. Let's take a look at the disks. So df dash. I should actually say lsblk first. Now these are the block devices. Obviously, we have our EFI partition. We have this partition here, which has BTRFS. So we have a bunch of file systems mounted on this one partition. Because it's using BTRFS, it lets you mount a whole bunch of them on that same BTRFS file system. Also, we have another partition here for swap. We have an 8 gig swap partition. And then this disk down here, SDB, 2 partitions. That's just the USB installer that I haven't removed out of the system using Ventoy. So that's just plugged into the system at the same time. So let's see here. df-h, how much is in use? So you can see a ton of file systems here mounted. Opt, home, roots, SRV, they're all in the same partition, so that's pretty flexible. They're all basically, using the same percentage of the same disk, so that doesn't matter. But they are listed as separate file systems, so you could adjust them as needed. And you got root right here. So we're basically using 6.8 gigs of storage to install OpenSUSE. So OpenSUSE is going to use up this much by default. I haven't really installed anything except NeoFetch so far, and that's how much storage it uses up. So let's take a quick look at our FS tab. So cat etc FS tab, and in here you can see all the disks identified by UUID. And you can see here BTRFS. These are all BTRFS on one partition. So you can see here the UUID is the same for each one of these. And it's BTRFS. That's how you can mount them like this. And you can see it specifies the subvolume. So these are all subvolumes on BTRFS. You can see your EFI, VFAT partition, swap partition, and so on. And you can see some snapshots mounted here too, which is BTRFS too. Anyways, yes, and we talked about swap space, so there you go. That's disk layout, swap space, RAM usage. So next, let's take a look at YAST. So YAST is a nice tool. It's a command line tool and a GUI tool that lets you configure most things you would want to configure with your system. A lot of times, if you're a Linux admin, you're going to want to do things on the command line and with config files and not use a tool like that. But if you're new or you just don't want to deal with a lot of that stuff, or you're not familiar with how to do that with a specific tool, YAST is a great way to just have a point-and-click tool where you can kind of just figure things out and get something working, and it lets you do everything from your firewall to like setting up Samba shares and installing software, all that great stuff. So first, I want to show you I'm going to show you from you need sudo, and I'm going to show you how to do this from the command line. There's a text-based tool, then I'm going to show you the GUI tool. So YAST. So YAST is one of the big things that sets OpenSUSE apart. It's one of the unique things. It's this big configuration tool that just handles a lot of stuff. It's a unique thing. A lot of people like it. Personally, it's not my favorite thing. It's great to have a tool like this, but I think the way they do it, for me, it feels like it overlaps with existing tools, and it's like personally, I like to do things manually a lot of the time, and I feel like even if you did want a tool like this, it could be a little bit more cohesive and more organized and look prettier. Just my own thoughts, but it is a nice tool to have, and a lot of people like it. I can give it credit for what it is. Anyways, and YAST has been around for many, many, many years. It's very old. It's been around a long time. So software. You have different sections here: virtualization, security, and users, network services. It lets you do all kinds of stuff: Samba, VNC, all kinds of stuff you can configure. So you don't have to look up how to install Samba, how to do all of these things. You can just do it through a nice menu-based tool like this. Really terrific in that sense if you don't know what you're doing, or you just don't want to deal with it, or you just want something easy to manage stuff. Maybe you do know what you're doing and how to do it manually, but you just want something that's going to take care of it, that's tested, and that works. So anyways, you can do online updates, software management, add-on products, all this sort of stuff. Software repositories, you can configure those all through this nice little tool. Check your hardware, your printer, all that kind of stuff, network stuff, security and users. So I wanted to show you the firewall just to give you an example. When you launch that, it launches a separate tool. So YAST is actually a set of multiple different tools. So from your main YAST menu, when you select a category, it's going to launch a separate tool. It's still relatively cohesive, but it's kind of separate, which is I don't know. It is what it is. But yeah, you can go here and configure, for example, your DMZ, and you can tab on over to here, and you can tab down to here and select known ports. You can add them, you can remove them, you can, select what's here, stuff like that. F9 to get out of here. All right, F9 and F10 for yes, F9 to quit. So quit out of that. Now let's try YAST. Let's try the GUI for YAST. So YAST right here, and you can see there's a bunch of, you can directly go to the YAST user and group management, YAST systemd journal, YAST, all these different YAST tools, software management. You can go directly to those tools if you want. They're all going to show up when you search for them. But if you just go to YAST itself, this is like the main menu for YAST, that when you click on something in it, it's going to let you, it's going to bring you to those other tools, right? So this is what I say when I mean it isn't as cohesive as it could be. I feel like it could all be tied together in one program instead of a bunch of separate things. For a tool like this, I know, like, Unix philosophy is one tool that does everything, but YAST is one tool. Even though they broke it up into separate tools, it's really one tool anyways. But that's not a big deal. It's still kind of nice that it gives you all of this stuff and that they've gone through the trouble to do all of this. So they're not being lazy with how they manage the system, and this is kind of a good thing. And it's great that someone, did something like this. So anyways, you have all of these things all laid out in different sections. So on the left side here, you have different sections like software, hardware, system. You see here, this lists out the sections here, software, hardware, system, and all the things underneath it. You can click here for bootloader, and it's going to bring up this separate tool. It lets you, manage your bootloader, change kernel parameters. See, this is a whole lot easier. If someone told you, oh, you have to change a kernel parameter for a certain feature or to fix a problem, you can easily do it here with barely knowing what you're doing. You don't have to edit a grub configuration file or manually update your grub. You can just do it with this config tool. So this is kind of nice in this, and maybe you forget like the path to the grub config file or the command to build it, whatever the case. Here, if you don't have to remember it or think about it, you can just edit things or add whatever parameters you want, however you like to, right? A lot of nice stuff you can do. Bootloader options, all of that kind of stuff. All right, this is, you know what? I don't want to do this. So yeah, I guess I had to pull down some information from online. Anyways, let's get out of here and look at some of the other things. You can do network settings. I think this is going to fail, actually, because we're not using Wicked. So network is handled by network manager or completely disabled. YAST unable to configure stuff. All right. So network manager, yeah, it's telling me everything's enabled, controlled by network manager. So we can't really do a whole lot there. As a partitioner, so nice tool for partitioning disks, and it even shows things like tempfs and NFS, standard disk partitioning tool. All this great stuff built in here. What else? We should look at software management and software repositories probably. All right, skip this. You know what? This is trying to access the media that I installed from, which I should probably remove. Well, anyways, you show packages with these statuses. You can search for different packages on the system. This is what's installed, I guess. And you could search for things if you wanted, and whatever else. It's a standard, it's a standard, like you can click on a package and see information about it, dependencies, and so on and so forth. Basically standard package management stuff, right? Also software repositories. It's worth taking a look at. You can see all the different repositories and the URLs for them that it pulls from. You got main, non-OSF, non-open source, main repository, all of these nice things, debug, source, etc. You can configure those if you want. NTP, Samba, VNC, all that great stuff, firewall. So let's take a look at the GUI version of what we already looked at. So see, this is the exact same thing that we just looked at. Let's select DMZ. So you have known ports, and you can add or remove or whatever else. And you have SSH here. That's exactly what we were just looking at, except in the text-based version of YAST. This is the exact same thing. It's just this is on a GUI, and the other one is in a text-based menu system, right? Basically the exact same thing. Pretty neat, right? It's like a one-to-one correspondence. Anyways, close that up. All right, really abort? Yes. All right. Users and group management. This is the type of thing you should have a GUI for. And sometimes it has to initialize stuff. It's a little slow sometimes. I don't know why it has to be like this. So if I were to be critical, this is something I might be critical of. This is taking way too much time just for something simple like this. This is why I would like to just use tools like user add user, or just edit the password file, whatever. You can see I only have one user on the system, but a nice list. You can edit users, change things, like you can edit, change the details, password, like your home directory, pub, SSH keys, that kind of stuff. That's all fine and great. It's a terrific tool. Basically what you would expect. What else? You can configure hypervisor stuff like Zen or KVM. Choose hypervisor to install. I don't want to install any hypervisor right now. But basically you get the idea. This lets you configure all of these things. I'm definitely not going through everything here. I should take a look at systemd journal. Yeah, systemd journal and vendor drivers. And I think that's probably about it. Maybe file system snapshots. That's a unique thing to look at. So here's the journal entries for systemd. They're basically systemd binary logs. Yeah, so just stuff that's been logged. That's terrific. This is basically just a log viewer. That's all that is. Anyways, nothing too exciting there. Vendor drivers. All right, I don't want to insert the CD. Does this really require a CD? Okay, yeah, I'm not going to look at that any further. All right, let's look at snapshots and just to take a look, right? All right, this shows me the snapshots in the system. This is what it's been taking, and I imagine you could roll back to. I haven't tried rolling back, but this is what it gives you. Kind of a nice feature of OpenSUSE. Not something I'm making use of, but if I could see this being very useful for someone else. Now, what else here? So that is basically, I think that's everything I wanted to show you for it. All the other stuff like the NTP, all these other things, they're basically what you would expect. It's a nice tool, but that's basically YAST for OpenSUSE. So I wanted to briefly talk about Nvidia drivers. Now, Nvidia drivers are tricky. There is the open source driver, the Nuvo or Nuevo, however you say. I think it's actually pronounced Nuvo, not Nuevo. But there's the open source community driver that comes installed by default on most distros, including OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. Also, there's the proprietary drivers, and now Nvidia has their open source drivers, which has the kernel module open sourced, and it still has a proprietary user space component, but basically they have their proprietary and their open source driver from Nvidia a lot. So there's three main options. There's the two from Nvidia and the one that's completely community based. And if you have an older card, like a 10 series and older, you're going to need the full proprietary one. You can either use the community open source driver, which has bad performance, or you can use the fully proprietary driver from Nvidia, but you can't use the open source driver from Nvidia, so you have to make sure you have the right driver. If you use Nuvo, which comes by default, which is what I'm using, it works perfectly. You're just not going to get the best performance with games or whatever else. If you do want to install the driver from Nvidia, just make sure you install the correct one. That's the only tricky thing. That's the case for OpenSUSE and for other distros as well. You just have to watch out for that. Some distros are easier than others, and depending on how the packages are organized. So I'm probably going to do a separate video on NVIDIA drivers on OpenSUSE. I'm just going to show you what comes here by default right now. So say lsmod rep-i NVI, so no NVIDIA drivers. And if you go NOU, you can see Nuvo driver right here. So you can see Nuvo and a bunch of things related to Nuvo. So those are all in there. So that's what's in use. This is the community edition open source driver, less performance, but it works on practically everything. So yeah, it works on practically everything, and this is one of the reasons why it's usually installed by default on most distros. Some distros, like the latest version of Ubuntu, was able to figure out what the best thing was for my needs and install the proprietary driver for me and the correct one for my older NVIDIA card. So that was kind of nice, but usually they're just going to install Nuvo by default. Anyways, when you install them, if you do install driver from Nvidia using the package manager. Make sure you're specifying the version you want, whether it be open or not open. So just something to be aware of, and I'm probably going to do a separate video on that, so keep your eye out for that. Next, I wanted to talk about Wi-Fi drivers. So I didn't really have to do anything for this. Your mileage may vary if you have a different Wi-Fi card. Some people, specific Wi-Fi chipsets, people have trouble with them. These days, it's not that common, but sometimes people still have issues. Certain cards are problematic. So if you look here, you can see I'm using a wired network, but there's my wired network, but it also shows my wireless networks in the area. So you can tell the wireless card is already working, and meaning the drivers for Wi-Fi are working by default. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to see these access points that are in my area. The fact that I can see these shows me that Wi-Fi is working. I just haven't configured it or connected to it yet, because I'm connected to a wired connection, which is going to be way better. So anyways, Wi-Fi and network settings. That's about everything I wanted to show you for network settings. The network is, so I don't believe Wicked is even installed. I have not used Wicked myself. So yeah, tabbing this out, nothing there. So I'm not going to mess around with that, but basically I'm using Network Manager to automatically configure the network using DHCP. So let's see, what else did we want to talk about? SE Linux, XE Linux versus AppArmor. So no SE Linux on SUSE. SUSE has opted to go the AppArmor route because it's easier for people to manage. And so apparently AppArmor was selected, but it is not enabled by default in the kernel on Tumbleweed. So let's take a look here. Cat, sys, module, and AppArmor. Parameters enabled. So if you take a look here, N for no. So it is not enabled in the kernel currently, but if you were, you could enable it. I imagine. I have not looked into this, and I have no desire to do that. So for the firewall, there is a firewall. Let's take a look. And you saw we can configure that with YAST if you want, but you could also use a CLI tool. Sudo firewall cmd -- list all. And there you go. You can list out some firewall info. So I'm not going to go any further than that there. I'm just showing you that that's what's there. Now, also, unsurprisingly, they're using Pipewire. So for audio, we have Pipewire on here. I'm not going to configure that or mess around with it, but it is what's in use, which you would expect on most modern Linux distros, especially one that's a rolling release like Tumbleweed. Now, multimedia support out of the box. Versus extra steps. So no, it's not supposed to give you all the multimedia support by default out of the box. You would generally have to install this. One thing I should point out is VLC is installed by default. So if you look here, VLC should play practically everything, I think, by default. So you shouldn't have any issues there. And if any of the media, another thing to consider, media apps installed through Flatpak should have all the needed codecs packaged together with that media app. So just install things through Flatpak and you are all set. So those are probably the easiest ways. Use a VLC or just install your preferred media app using Flatpak. However, if you do want to install the codecs for all your other tools, you can do that pretty easily. I'm going to try to show you real quick here. I haven't attempted to do this before, but I'm going to try to do this real quick for this video. So to install media support and codecs on SUSE Linux Tumbleweed, you can say sudo zipper in for install and OPI. We're going to install this tool called OPI. And this is just a helper tool to install commonly used software. You see those red errors? Those are just telling you it has trouble accessing the install media that I installed from, but it can still reach the online repositories, no problem. So we're going to install OPI here. Should be pretty quick. And there we go. We have OPI installed. So now we're going to use OPI to install codecs. So sudo OPI codecs, and this should install the codecs for you. So you're using the OPI tool that we just installed to install the codecs. So OPI is a tool that helps you install commonly needed bundles of packages. So this will automatically install whatever you need to make codecs work. It's just a convenience tool that helps you do that stuff. That's my understanding of it. I've never used it before. So this is actually new to me. So let's give it a shot. Install codecs from the Pacman repository. So other thing I should point out, apparently the Pacman repository is a separate repository that has a lot of stuff like multimedia support and everything like that. And I believe you would have to, if you weren't using OPI, you would have to enable this repository manually and then install these codecs. This will install the repository for me and install the codecs. So it does, it's like a convenience thing that will just do everything for you. So there we go. That should have done it. So I'm not going to do any more testing or demos with Multimedia. Just kind of want to show you what that process looks like in this video. Just show you probably one of the easier ways to do it after mentioning VLC and flatpaks and stuff. So other thing to go over, let's take a look at some of the software on the system. So this terminal, obviously it's console because it's a default KDE thing. So we have console terminal. We have the Dolphin file manager, which is pretty decent. Nice KDE file manager, exactly what you would expect with KDE. And we have, for text editors installed by default, we have Kate, which is a nice text editor, and also it's a nice IDE. It has a lot of features like, built-in Git functionality, syntax highlighting, split screens, all that kind of stuff. Everything you would need to use it as an actual IDE or, code editor. So there's that. As far as web browsers, by default, comes with Firefox right here. So it takes a second to start up, but not too crazy. Few seconds for the initial startup. See, if we kill that and start it again, do a hot startup, slightly faster, not too zippy, but not bad, right? So there's Firefox, goes to OpenSUSE.org by default. Load up whatever other websites. Basically just a wow, that's what you get when you misspell Google. Anyways, yeah, basically simple Firefox stuff, basically what you would expect by default on most Linux distros. Another thing to point out, by default with the KDE desktop option that I selected during install, this comes with LibreOffice. So we have LibreOffice Writer right here, and if you go over to Office, you see all the LibreOffice stuff like Math, Impress, Draw, Calc, Base, even basically the equivalent of MS Office or MS Access, basically a lightweight database, and a bunch of other stuff, right? And you get all that by default with the default install when you install KDE. And the other interesting thing, if you go to graphics, all right, so it's not here, but I believe they have GIMP on here. So GIMP, does this have to be? No, you know what? Maybe they didn't install GIMP for me. So no GIMP installed by default, which is pretty standard for most. Most distros aren't going to give you GIMP by default. Let's see. Let's try installing it. So. And now the other thing I wanted to point out while this is installing, so for a graphical software center, you have two options with KDE installed. So you have YAST. You can use YAST for, we already looked at that, but you can install software, search and install software through there. You also have the KDE, not Dolphin, but you have KDE Discover for software. So let's show you this real quick. So I want to see if this actually lets you do, so yeah, you can install GIMP through here if you wanted. And what was that? All right, anyways, there's an issue. All right, I don't want to look at that right now. So GIMP. you could, all right, you can install it from OpenSUSE Tumbleweed or FlatHub, right? So I believe it would, so I can launch it because it's already been installed. So I installed it from Zypper. So sudo Zypper in IN for install GIMP. So you can use the Zypper tool to install GIMP if you want. Or if you wanted to, you could have installed it through here. You could, if it weren't installed, you could install it. I installed it through there. So this was installed as an RPM package through OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. Now we can also install it with FlatHub. You could select FlatHub here and say install. So you can install both FlatHub and RPM versions of GIMP. So this is not pure KDE Discover is not pure KDE software, as other software in here too. And all right, we need to put our password in. There's a little delay in that, but here we go. So yeah, anyways, it gives you a lot of different choices for software, not just KDE stuff. So this is your second option. You have KDE Discover and you have YAST for graphical tools to install software. So we've still got this running, but let's take a quick look here. You can do Flatpak packages from the command line as well. So whoops. So you have the command line Zypper tool, but you also have the command line Flatpak tool. Flatpak, I'm not going to install from here, but list, Flatpak list, and you can list what is installed. So you can see we have GIMP, GNU Image Manipulation Program, installed as a Flatpak. RPM-QA. Oops. And you can see GIMP is installed here. If you query RPMs on the system, GIMP 304 is installed. And if you query Flatpaks, you can see GIMP 304. So both same version of GIMP installed, 304. So you have, I guess, being that this is a rolling release, the actual package installed from the system, the RPM package, is pretty close to the exact same version as the Flatpak version. So that's kind of a nice thing about rolling releases. You don't have to run, you don't have to install GIMP as a Flatpak to get the latest version. A lot of other distros that are point releases, you install Flatpak, you're going to get a newer version of GIMP. But if you install the, the system version through the system package manager, you're going to get an older version of GIMP. We're getting 3.0.4 with both of these on this system, so that's kind of nice. So yeah, one thing just to point out about this. So let's take a look under graphics and see how this looks under. So you can see here, two versions of GIMP. It's not super clear which one is which, but you have both of them here. Which one's the Flatpak and which one is the, which one's the Flatpak and which one is the system package. And run them both side by side here. And is that even going to work? I mean, maybe it knows that another version of it is running. Anyways, that's all I really wanted to show you with that. That is Flatpak. That Flatpak and Zypper, the package managers that we have on OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. So yeah, this has been OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. Pretty neat distro if you want a corporate backed distro with something that's rolling release and stable at the same time. Giving you the latest stuff and some relative stability so things don't break all the time like with Arch. Arch isn't really that bad, but it has that reputation. But anyways, if this is what you want from a distro, this might be a good distro to try out. So yeah, there you go. OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. And if you like this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below if you've tried this yourself, or let me know what distros you have tried. What's your favorite distro? Leave a comment down below. Also, definitely going to want to hit that subscribe button because you don't want to miss out on our other great tech content. We're doing more Linux stuff, but we also do like electronics, hardware, software, servers, basically just anything tech related, robots, Raspberry Pis, that kind of stuff. So you don't want to miss out. Make sure you're subscribed. Also hit the bell icon. But that's it for today. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on that next video.